How'd the morning go? We good? We good? We feeling it? Let's go. All right. All right. Mike, thank you so much for making the trip down. It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Cory. How are you?
Doing well. So I don't think you were here last year. So what do you think? Pacific Bitcoin.
Well, it's pretty good. It's in California, at least.
Yeah, at least it's in California. So listen, a lot of people maybe don't know a lot about BitGo, and obviously you've become an important partner for us. And you know, we announced a couple of weeks ago about our plans to joint venture on the USA's first ever Bitcoin-only trust company, which is very cool. Can you just give us a little bit about the early days of BitGo, like what got you into this and Bitcoin and the whole thing?
Sure. Yeah, I think these days a lot of people know us for custody, which is almost antithetical to many of the people here. So we'll get to that in a minute. It'll come next. Look, 2012, 2013, started playing with Bitcoin like a lot of people did. I was helping people buy that had a lot. And I was doing air gap computer, pretty amateur hour, to be honest. But as that grew in value, there just weren't a lot of good ways to protect it. And I was getting more worried that I would lose not just my money, but those of my friends that I was helping with. So it just led me to dig. There's this little corner of Bitcoin called P2SH. There's a lot of talk today here at this conference about multi-sig. We were the first that really took that into like a commercial model. And in those early days, everything was so welcoming on the Bitcoin community. It was really easy. Bitcoin Wizards. I kind of wrote up a simple, I wouldn't even call it a white paper. It was really more like a one-pager of like what it might look like, and got some good encouragement. So next thing you know, I spent the summer of 2013 writing all of what was the first of BitGo. And the idea was 2 out of 3 model. We hold 1 key. You hold 2 keys. We can disappear off the face of the earth. You still have your money. And that's the basic guiding principle. And of course, we still have that today. We run that wallet platform. We're the only wallet platform in the world that runs full 2 or 3 on everything we do. Of course, it's expanded beyond just multi-sig. But that's the core. And then the second thing that people know us for is custody. So around 2016, 2017, it became clear that there were businesses, we call them institutions, but they're really businesses, that needed to have someone take all the keys. That is, they wanted to participate. And for folks at BitGo, very mission-driven, we want to see Bitcoin ubiquitous globally. That means individuals can manage it. That means businesses can manage it. Everyone. And when it comes to businesses, you need a level of continuity, right? That is, you can't put it on a ledger and stick it in some guy's drawer, right? Insider theft is a real thing. Somebody can pass on and lose a PIN code or lose the backup keys. So businesses needed something that encapsulated kind of the rules of the business so that they can manage Bitcoin. Now, by the way, the storage of Bitcoin is getting way better. Super happy to hear about some of the stuff we've seen here today. It's still too hard. We got a lot of work to do. I hope nobody feels like it's a complete thing. But when it comes to doing that inside of a business context, it's even harder anyway. So we do a lot of custody these days. Looking forward to do a Bitcoin-specific custody. We can talk about that if you want. But that's what we do. That's
great. And it's quite an all-star team of folks who've come through and worked on Bitcoin at BitGo. I mean, I know I'm aware at least of 3 or 4, pretty well-known Bitcoiners. Can you give us kind of a rundown of the BitGo alumni and what they meant to you at the time and what they're up to now?
Sure. Look, it's one of the things you're most proud of as a business leader when you can see people go on to do better things kind of on their own and explore their own careers and their lives. By the way, everybody that's left BitGo, I shouldn't say everybody, but the names I'm going to name, some of which you might recognize, like all of them have a really positive view of BitGo, of me, like we still talk, we're still friends. Some of them wanted to work on specific things around Lightning or Bitcoin or whatnot, and they're off doing that, which is great. So anyway, Jameson Lopp, obviously been a central figure from the early days, been such a great promoter of Bitcoin, was at BitGo. He went on to do Casa. A guy named Eric Sossman, you might not have heard of, but he's over at the Block team. I saw Mike Brock is up here. He really wanted to go and work on that. He's kid super genius. Mark Earhart, he wrote the UTXO unspent selection mechanism, which is today in Bitcoin Core. He went on to chain code. By the way, that unspent selection mechanism that he's using was developed at BitGo and then contributed in, right? So obviously, you had to rewrite it in C++, but anyway, this Mark Earhart went to that. Brandon Black recently went to Reardon Labs. Alex Bosworth is at Lightning Labs, been pushing on Lightning and submarine swaps and all these other things for years. So look, it's really an honor to be able to list these people. All of them are still friends, and happy that they were able to make a step through the BitGo doors.
Yeah, definitely shout out Brandon. He's helped us out a little bit on the Swan Vault that we announced earlier. So that's fantastic. So let's move forward to looking at the future. And when we started talking a lot toward the beginning of this year, you were kind of laying out a lot of your ideas and visions for what the future of Bitcoin custody could look like. I remember you talking about things like multi-institutional, but also multi-jurisdictional. So maybe just give the TLDR on kind of the way you see things shaping up.
Well, there's a lot of good things yet to come. I get involved a lot these days with regulatory side of things, legal side of things, testifying at the House, trying to help legislators and regulators figure this thing out. There's some things that you can do with digital assets you've never been able to do before. I remember I was doing a presentation at the California Senate, and I was talking about multi-sig. I pulled a $100 bill out of my wallet, and I said, okay, who has custody of this? And they're like, okay, you do. And I hand it to a guy in the audience. And who has a custody? He does. Okay. I take it back, I rip it in half, and I give him half, and I keep half. And I say, who has custody now? And of course, they're all in like shock. Nobody will answer. They're like, did he just rip a $100 bill in the state capitol building? Which I guess I shouldn't answer whether I did that or not. But the point is that we can do things with this type of programmable money that you've never been able to do before. And it's fascinating. So we're just tapping the surface. We have custodians. We have 4 around the globe today, growing to 7, hopefully by the end of next year. And the point is to start to put keys in multiple jurisdictions. And this whole nonsense about, can my jurisdiction block my access to my asset? I know a lot of you will say self-custody is the way, and that's true. That's very true. But when it comes to businesses and people that are managing money on behalf of others, it's still going to be there. We're still going to need some amount of custody. Anyway, can we make it so that we don't have single point of failure with your jurisdiction? And we can. So anyway, that's one of the big things I think is coming. Why we're doing like a Bitcoin-only trust company. So everything we do is this 2 out of 3 mechanism is pretty good. You can go to 3 out of 5 if you want to. There's other models. But we haven't gone as deep in terms of what you can do inside of the Bitcoin core protocol to specifically secure Bitcoin. So there's more we can do. And then why? We need to be designing today for trillion-dollar wallets. So when we started BitGo in 2013, like a big wallet was $10 million. That was a big wallet. And by 2015, a big wallet was like $100 million. By 2017, it was $1 billion. And then where are we going next? Right? So we need to be planning. It takes a long time. This is not easy. We need to be thinking a lot harder about what happens with the various types of nation-state attacks that will come. So anyway, why build a Bitcoin-only trust company? It's so that we can pull out all the stops, so that we can use time-locked transactions, we can use recovery addresses, we can set up a series of wallets that are specific to the Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is going to be at least 50% of the value for a while. That's the point.
Yeah. So go a little bit deeper on a couple of those. In specifically, what I think is really intriguing here, and I think a lot of people will be interested, is some of the aspects of Bitcoin that enable you to do specific things. So you ticked off a couple, time lock contracts, things like that. Like, flesh that out for us a little bit.
So I'd like to think that BitGo has at least contributed a little bit to some of the firsts inside of the Bitcoin industry. We were the first to adopt Taproot, right? We've got a multi-sig 2 wallet available today. There's not very many of those out there. With Taproot, you have some capabilities to create some special types of wallets. And there's these output scripts that you can put them on transactions. You can also embed them into what becomes an actual wallet and use them. But what we're thinking of is actually a set of tiers where you can time lock them for a period of time. But it dovetails with a very important second point, which, if any of you heard of like what happened at Prime Trust. So Prime Trust lost a wallet. All right, look, mistakes are going to happen out there. I guess that part wasn't the worst. It's kind of what followed that was the worst. All of us need to know, if someone is holding money on behalf of somebody else in a fiduciary capacity, do they have the money? You know that. So audit standards, best practices, every regulator, every asset class today, an auditor will do what's random sampling. They'll take a look at your contracts, they'll take a look at your bank accounts, your wallets, whatnot. They will randomly sample some of them. The fact that Prime Trust was able to operate for a year and a half without being noticed, because they were audited, is due to the fact that it was random sampling. If we're going to have great custody, holding trillions of dollars worth of assets, we have to actually touch not just a couple of wallets, every single wallet. And the only way to do that, well, is to kind of change the technology. So specifically, when you get in time lock transactions, you'll run into some complexity around like, well, when does that expire? And you have to move them when it does expire. But that dovetails pretty well with a periodic audit. So you could imagine something that runs roughly quarterly that can prove that you have every single Satoshi. And then on top of that, of course, provide a level of security, a set of wallets where you're going between policies in order to get the money out. Now, by the way, this only works for like really large flows of money. We do store billion-dollar accounts for a few customers today. When you have that level of depth of asset, you're willing to lock it up for long periods of time, and so that can be made to work.
So we're talking a lot here about institutional customers or business customers. There are obviously other types of entities that are similar, whether it's pension funds or asset managers, governments. When you look at, let's just call it like the next 10 years, what are you looking at and who are you hearing from and getting inquiries from, and kind of where do you see the next wave of large group buyers, let's call it, of Bitcoin?
I think everybody here should be pretty excited. Like, progressing from the high risk participants in Bitcoin to the low risk, we've actually come a long way in the last 10 years. So it used to be that it was a pretty esoteric part of the world that's willing to touch anything related to Bitcoin. Through the COVID period and whatnot, we started to see endowments that want to invest in Bitcoin. Endowments' entire purpose is to have assets that last forever, right? So that's a huge accomplishment when people are starting to recognize, hey, we need to have Bitcoin as part of that portfolio. So that's already happened. Pension funds are still out. The pension funds go through a complicated set of processes. They've got committees upon committees. These guys write checks for large amounts of flow, and so they do it very methodically. In order for them to participate in today's markets, we do need to see a little bit of market structure. Now, I don't want to have yesterday's market structure with like the equities world or even the derivatives world, but we do have to separate some of the things that happen with custody and trading. And specifically today, we've got these verticalized stacks of exchanges that operate in every function. They are the buyer's broker, they are the seller's broker, they are the exchange, or the custodian, or the clearinghouse, and everything in between. The largest participants will not be able to come in until this is de-risked. And so anyway, I think custody has a huge part. Look, when it comes to custody, the good news is that like everybody's aligned in the interests. Don't lose the fucking money, that's number one, and then make sure you're dealing with legitimate actors, that's number two. That's really all we do. So regulatory clarity, which applies less to Bitcoin anyway, but it really doesn't apply to what we do in the custody space. If we just fix that, we get that cleaned up, the pension funds can come in. It'll take a few more years.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming down. Thanks for the partnership, and thank you for sharing your knowledge here with us today.
Thanks for everything you do too, Cory.
Oh, hi. Do you have your ticket to the next Pacific Bitcoin Festival? Join us as we shine a light on the best of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. Visit pacificbitcoin.com for the best deal on tickets now.